Hi, my name is Denise Rodriguez, and I'm here to share my faith story. Taking back to when I was a child growing up, we grew up in a Catholic household, very strict parents. There wasn't a lot of socializing outside the house unless it was with them. And every Sunday we went to church. And ironically, I grew up in a church that spoke Spanish, and I didn't speak Spanish. So I went as a ritual every Sunday, sat in the pew, listened to a sermon that I really didn't understand because that was what was expected of me. I always knew Jesus existed, but I didn't have a personal relationship with Jesus. In my younger years, I just remember that that was the thing that we did every Sunday. At the age of 5, we had a tragedy in our family. My 10-year-old brother hung himself, and I grew into being a very angry person about that, not understanding because if they told me, that God was so good, why would He allow my brother to hang himself? I remember watching my parents going through depression and having a very difficult time accepting the death of my brother, but they continued in their faith, and I kind of grew apart in my teenage years, still attending church because I had no choice, but just really not having that relationship with God. As the years went on, I just remember in my early, say, 19s or 20s, I stopped going to church. Still kind of believed that there was God, but just never had a relationship with God. As years went on, I had experienced some traumas in my life, um, stemming from being in unhealthy relationships. My first husband was an addict, and I thought that if I just loved him enough, if I was just the perfect wife, that I could change him and I could get him to stop using drugs. That didn't work. Instead of me helping him to change, I was changing as a person, becoming a very angry person. Our relationship was very volatile. I just can sit here and vividly remember some of the arguments that we had. I remember in my early 20s to maybe mid 20s being arrested several times for assaultive behavior. I became, instead of the victim, I became the perpetrator, um, as a defense mechanism to everything that I was going through. So that relationship didn't last, but I did have two children. I was pretty much a single mom through the whole time that we were together. But then we separated, and I was blessed to meet somebody else in my life in my early 20s or mid 20s. And this individual was, very healthy. He believed in God. We started going to church together, and life seemed pretty good. And he accepted my two children. I accepted his son. So together, at the time, we had three sons, and then God blessed me with a fourth boy. And life was good. Ram was, ex-military. He lived a structured life. We had very little in common, two different cultures. I'm Puerto Rican. Ron was not. He always said he really didn't know his nationality, but somewhere between Pennsylvania Dutch and Irish and German. So we were very different cultures. He loved my family, the way we were such a big family. And I remember the first time that we had dinner at my mom's house. It was a Sunday, and he whispered in my ear, "What's the occasion?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, there's so many people in your house. Is there a party?" And I said, "No, this is just Sunday in a Puerto Rican's home. This is our norm." And he loved that about our culture. Um, he was into camping. I was definitely not into camping. And he would talk about planning a trip to take my boys. And I said I would never go camping because you just couldn't take your curling iron and your blow dryer on a camping trip. So as the boys and him were planning a camping trip, I felt like, wow, maybe I should go and try the experience. Went camping with them, and it was a little rough, but I really enjoyed the experience, and that was a tradition in our family, you know, we went to 2 or 3 camping trips every year. We continued to go to church on Sundays. I can't tell you that I was really in a relationship with God, but I was making it more of a tradition to go to church until 5 years into the relationship. We were now engaged to be married. We had our sons living under the same roof for the most part. And a month before we got married, Ron passed away in his sleep. So once again, I'm now just not understanding why did God do this once again in my life. I'm happy, my boys were happy, and you just once again ripped somebody out of my life. So I stopped going to church. My relationship with God, the little relationship that I had, was no longer there. And I just kind of was going through the motions. As years go by, I would go to church to please my mom and dad. It would make them happy for me to go to church with them on a Sunday. But it definitely wasn't for my benefit. Fast forward to about 6 years ago, my nephew continued to ask me to come to church with him, and I just wasn't interested. He went to a whole different church. I told him, hey, I go to Catholic church, even though I really wasn't going to Catholic church. I'm not going to go to your church. So one day, just to please him, I went to church, and this church was the Journey Church. And I walked in, and I kind of felt like goosebumps, and I said, well, maybe because it's cold in here, but I don't know. So I kept on going through the motions, meeting all these wonderful people. Everybody kept smiling, and I just could not believe that everybody was so nice at this church. And I said, well, this is just the first day. So I came back again. And I came back again, and I kept trying to find reasons not to come back to this church. I was still dealing with a lot of trauma, still trying to deal with a lot of depression and anxiety, going through the motions. I mean, I did find a job that I really loved doing, became a director of a drop-in center, dealing with people that are homeless, in addiction, and dealing with mental health issues, and that kind of felt like it was filling this void that I had. Because I really do enjoy helping people, but I just still did not learn how to help the most important person, which was myself. So I kept going to the church, and I started kind of getting involved, putting on this red shirt, joined the impressions team, and started greeting people. Even though I'm not a morning person, I would go in the morning and just smile and wave at people and welcoming them into the church, because I wanted them to feel welcome like I started to feel welcomed. And then one day, I kept trying to find reasons not to go back to church, excuses like maybe this is a cult. That's what I kept saying to myself. This has got to be a cult. So one day, I remember being at church, and I saw a homeless man come in, and obviously I'm drawn to homeless people because I always like to help. I said, I know that somebody from the church is going to tell this man that he has to leave, because you could tell clearly that he was not clean. His clothes were all disheveled. And I saw someone from the security team walk up to him, and I was like, they're going to tell him to leave. And I said, this is the excuse that I've been looking for to not come back to church. And I saw him talking to the guy, and they both started turning around looking at me, and I was wondering, like, why do they keep looking at me? So they both walked up to me, and I thought that was pretty strange because I really didn't know this person. And he asked me, aren't you Justin's aunt? Don't you work with homeless people? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, do you think you can give this individual, some information, and then when you're done, have him have a seat inside to listen to the service? And right there at that moment, I felt the goosebumps that I first had when I first walked in multiplied by 1,000. I realized that I realized that I was where I needed to be for myself and for other people. I realized that I no longer was going to church just for the motions. I wasn't going to church to please anybody but myself. Um, I've realized that God had me there for a reason. Um, I started having this deep relationship with Jesus in a way that I never had before. I realized that I kept looking for excuses not to be there, not understanding that I was there because God called me to be there. Um, I've been able to work on myself because as I always say, I'm a work in progress. To work on my past traumas, and I now also run a trauma group as one of the J groups at the Journey Church, because I realized that even though I was always helping people, I never even talked about my traumas. I never talked about attempting suicide twice in the past. I never talked about my depression or my anxiety. I never talked about just the constant feeling hopeless. Never talked about it. And now I'm able to talk about it, and the trauma is no longer my story, as it was in the past, where it was just deeply embedded. Now it's on the surface, and it's there to help other people. I enjoy being able to connect my church with my job. The Journey Church is real supportive of what we do at the Horizon House, and we get to connect and do events together. I get to travel and do mission trips to other countries and helping people in different areas. I've been part of building things in other countries. I've been able to just bring hope to other people in different avenues. But for the most part, I'm really grateful that I've learned self-care, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and most important, I've been able to every day improve on my relationship with God, talk about God. I can talk about God at work. I can pray at my job where before that wasn't even an option. And so I can honestly say that my faith story has come a long way. I continue to grow in faith. I continue to make God a part of my daily life every single day, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I'm still here. I'm grateful that I'm able to share my story and hopefully give hope to other people.